Hey, what's up? How are you doing, ProGuides family? Welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be discussing aim duels and how you can start winning more of them more consistently. We all know the feeling of just not being able to beat that one opponent, and honestly, it really sucks. So today, we decided to help you out with that. Soon, you can become the guy that just seems to be insta-headshotting everyone. But before we can go in depth, it is of course time for our question of the day. And today it will be, what was your best multi-kill? Personally, I still vividly remember acing the entire terrorist team by rushing up Banana on the first CT pistol round. I think we still ended up losing that game, but hey, at least getting that ace was a great feeling either way. Now that that's out of the way, let's start off by talking about winning aim duels when you are the only one peeking into your opponent. Peeking into an opponent who is already holding the angle can be quite challenging. After all, you have to 1. Spot the enemy, 2. Stop moving, 3. Adjust your crosshair, and 4. Shoot, while your opponent only has to do that last step. So how can we make your life easier while also making their life harder? Firstly, you want to perfect your crosshair placement. You always want to be able to pre-aim all the common spots at headshot level. To practice this, you could go into your own offline server by writing DE_map in console. So if you, for instance, wanted to go practice on Inferno, you could write DE_Inferno. If you wanted to go to Overpass, it's easy. You can go to DE_Overpass. As soon as you get into the map, you could write bot_kick if there are any bots, and then the server will be all yours. On here, you'll want to visualize all the common angles you might see an opponent play and get really good at pre-aiming them. Make sure you're really critical here. If you're off by even just a little bit, try again until it's absolutely perfect consistently. If you don't like that method of practicing, or if you want a bit more of a challenge, you could also use the YPrac practice maps for all of the map pool maps. Here in the pre-fire mode, bots will spawn in most of the common spots of the map, and you're tasked to clear all the angles to progress to either bomb site. This map is great to make sure that you don't overstep and to get a good feeling of where the opponent's head will be on all the common angles. The final method I'd recommend is going to be Valve or free-for-all deathmatch and practicing your crosshair placement there as well. It's very important that you focus on just your pre-aiming though, because if you lose focus and instead just try to kill everyone, you won't improve as fast. As soon as you get your crosshair placement down to a high level, you'll usually find yourself hardly having to adjust your crosshair once you do spot an enemy. But now you also have to get good at counter-strafing. Counter-strafing is when you press the opposite movement key to stop moving and lose momentum faster. After all, if you still have momentum, you'll be inaccurate, and of course you want to avoid that whenever possible. Usually when you're running around, you'll just want to counter-strafe as soon as you see an enemy, but if you're just clearing angles, you'll want to approach it a bit differently. If you're peeking a specific angle, you should counter-strafe before you even see an opponent. This way, you'll be pre-aiming at a spot, move out, and before you even see if anyone is there, you'll counter-strafe in advance. If there is a guy there, you'll already be standing still with your crosshair on his head, and all you have to do is click. As for practicing your counter-strafing skills, I'd advise doing the exact same thing as I did for practicing your pre-aiming and crosshair placement, since it helps with both really well. If you find yourself struggling with counter-strafing specifically though, you could also just get into aim_bots and try to start running, counter-strafe, and then one-tap bots. Don't try bursting or spraying though, because then you don't really notice your first shot accuracy. So truly try to make sure that every kill is a one-tap. If you're doing it right, you'll be able to quickly counter-strafe and consistently fire an accurate shot into the head of the bot. As soon as you've perfected that, you could go back to the YPrac practice maps and afterwards into a real game. Now that you know how you should be peeking, let's also go over some common mistakes that you should avoid. Firstly, something that I see a lot, especially at lower levels, is peeking while also moving forward. If you're peeking while both moving forward and left, for example, to stop moving and counter-strafe correctly, you'll have to tap both D and S simultaneously instead of just D. Except for it being harder for you to perform, you also move slower, so you'll be easier to shoot for your opponent. Another big mistake I see lots of is peeking too wide. Wide peeking isn't always bad and certainly has its place, especially if there's a teammate behind you or if it's really close quarters. But peeking wide and against an opper is usually a bad idea and will only really work out if the opper misses their shot and can't fall back in time. So it's really a high risk and a very low reward strategy. Against oppers, it's much more worth it to try to shoulder peek the angle first instead. So that way you'll bait out a shot and can hold for the repeek and hopefully get an easy kill. Now that we've gone over peeking angles aggressively and how you should approach that, let's go over holding angles instead. If you're holding an angle, you should always try to make sure it's favorable. If it's not, hold a different angle instead. If you're the one holding the angle, you're waiting for your opponent to show up in your crosshair. So if they do, make sure that you have a really good chance at winning that engagement. If you're the CT player and your opponent will have to come to you, don't settle for a 50-50 angle. Instead, find an angle that you're really comfortable with and where you are sure that you can get an easy kill. It's even better if you think that you can get multiple kills from there or even get a kill and fall back. To give an example, holding top mid from window with an up can be really powerful. You can initially hold the angle, get a kill, fall back, and even ask your teammates for a flash and re-peek at will. Another really strong angle that you could play on is Mustang on A-site nuke. To clear you, your opponents will have to run out hut and look all the way up while also exposing themselves to pretty much all of the angles on site and heaven. Your opponents will have to really commit to the push before they can kill you, and even if they do, you still have a really big advantage. Carefully choosing what angles are and aren't good does take a lot of skill, so don't be scared to experiment. Maybe you'll find a really cool new angle that can get you kills consistently. A big way to find new angles is again going onto an offline server, then going into any map and trying to pre-aim all the angles that you would clear if you're trying to take the site. While you're doing that, record yourself and see what angles would have caught you off guard. Then go into a game and try out your newfound angles. You'll notice some of the angles work really well, while others, well, just forget about those. Then in your next game, try playing some of the angles that worked really well and see if they work again. If you find your new angles to be successful a lot of the time, then you can use them whenever you feel like it. Just make sure that you don't play the same angle 15 rounds in a row, because after the second or third round, it will be pretty obvious and will probably stop working. Now that you know all of the amazing angles and are able to find success with decent consistency, you just need to remember a few things. Firstly, try to avoid 90-degree angles as much as you can. If you're holding a 90-degree angle, your opponent has the biggest advantage on you possible if they are wide swinging. This is because if you're holding the angle at 90 degrees, your opponent will be moving across your screen the fastest. If you're instead holding the angle at 45 degrees, he'll be moving on your screen half as fast. So whenever possible, try to lower the angle you're holding as much as you can. You'll have more time to react, your opponent will be moving more slowly, and your opponent's pre-aim will more than likely be off as well. Practicing aim duels in a real match scenario is really inefficient, as we all know. Most of your time is not spent fighting another player, so the best way to practice winning more aim duels is not by just playing matchmaking, but instead by playing free-for-all deathmatch, the YPRAC practice maps, as well as 1v1 servers. There's plenty of servers that will allow you to play a 1 versus 1 against people with similar skill levels. A lot of these servers even take areas of existing maps to make these fights more realistic. These servers can allow for really good practice if you want it to be. Don't try to style on your enemy, but just try to win as many duels as you possibly can. Take favorable angles if you're holding, and pre-aim all the angles you expect your opponent to be if you're peeking. Playing like that might seem sweaty, and honestly it is, but if you want to improve, you've got to start off by really trying. If you play just for fun, you'll improve as well, but it'll just be a lot slower. Well, I'm sorry to say this, guys, but it's time for the unavoidable subject. I didn't want to tell you guys to just get better aim, because that will just come anyways with time and practice, and is not something that you can just implement right away. But as I'm sure you understand, it is undeniably a really big part of winning aim duels as well. If you truly want to win most of your aim duels, you're going to have to put in the hours to practice your aim. Practicing your aim is not particularly difficult, and there's no secret to it. I'd mostly recommend going into aim_bots if you want to just improve your raw aiming skills. Here, you can honestly practice most, if not all, the essential aiming skills depending on how you use them now. If you want to practice tracking, try tracking the bots while moving. If instead you want to practice your flicks, flick from bot to bot. Improving your aim takes time, and we know that that sucks. But if you're really dedicated to improving, you're just gonna have to put in those hours. But what if you're doing everything right and you still just can't win the aim duel against that one guy who just keeps insta-headshotting you? Well, I got some great advice for you, and so get ready to take this to heart. In fact, even get a notebook ready to write it down. Alright, are you ready? Just stop. If you keep losing the fight, just stop taking it. Sometimes it's better to just not give your opponent a 1v1 fight if they keep winning it. This is the point where one of those things that you've been ignoring all along comes in, your teammates. If one or multiple of your opponents just seems to be better than you, there's only really one still option to win, and that's playing with your teammates. No matter how good that guy might be, if he's fully blind, smoked off, or mollied, he'll be a lot less effective at being able to take off your head. If your teammates don't want to flash for you for whatever reason, turn it around and instead flash for them. We get that flashing for your teammate isn't as fun as being flashed for, but that goes both ways. So be a good teammate and help your mates win their duels more easily instead. So to conclude, in order to effectively peek, you need to have good crosshair placement and counter strafing so that all you have to do is click once the opponent is holding the angle that you just peeked. If you're instead trying to hold an angle, make sure it's an angle you're able to do work on and are comfortable playing. If you want to practice aim duels, you can do so in the YPrac practice maps or also by playing 1v1 servers. Of course, if you really want to become a great aimer and win all the aim duels, you're going to have to work on your aim as well. And lastly, if you really can't win the aim duel against a certain player or players, try to work with your team and use utility to overcome them that way instead. Well guys, that's going to be all for now, but don't you worry because there's a lot more content on this channel that I'm sure will really help you out, and there's also loads more on the way. All I ask for you guys in return is that you guys leave a like as well as subscribe. It won't cost you anything and it would really help us out. While you're at it, make sure to check out ProGuides.com if you want to reach your full potential. On there, we have some amazing coaches just waiting to help you out, as well as the one and only Simple Master Course. My name has been Renox, and I will be seeing you guys again very, very soon.